Senator Guthrie chairs the State Affairs Committee and sits on the Commerce and Human Resources Committee and Resources and Environment Committee. He joins us this week to talk about major bills that are passed towards the end of the legislative session and how you can be involved in the legislative process. Thank you so much, Senator Guthrie, for joining us here today. Can you tell us what the main atmosphere has been like this week in the legislature as the legislative session comes to a close?
I think as we get down near the end, everybody's just anxious to get wrapped up. It gets to the point where we've kind of worn out our welcome with one another, kind of put it in a little bit humorous context, a little bit tongue in cheek. And the big thing is getting the budgets finalized, because that's the one thing we have to do. And then there's always some creative things that seem to come at the end of the session that we're kind of dealing with as well. So that's more than anything, it's just an anxious feeling to get wrapped up and get out of here.
And with the legislative session hopefully coming to an end this week, what would you say were some of the major themes or issues that were discussed throughout this session?
Well, the number one thing was the budget situation that we're in with the shortfall and how to deal with that. And I've been pretty open and pretty critical that we created a lot of this problem for ourselves when we passed $450 million in tax cuts last year. And then after conforming with the big, beautiful bill, that we took another pretty substantial hit on our bottom line with that. So as a result of that, and also as a result of not being willing to take any of the $1.7 billion we have in savings accounts, then it's been an atmosphere of cutting budgets, of trying to move funds here and there to kind of, make sure that we show that we got a balanced budget. And it's been, I guess, disturbingly creative in a lot of ways for me to see what we're doing with our budget. And the budget process is not the way we used to do it. And I'm kind of troubled by that, but we're doing the best we can, and they'll eventually get there. But I think it's going to come at a kind of an expense, as we have cut a lot of things that I don't think they're going to be healthy in the long run. So that's the big thing, is the budget and how we're dealing with the shortfall.
And I know that.
And also,
oh, sorry, go for it.
What's that?
Oh, go for it.
Well,
go for it.
And also there's been a lot of talk on immigration, E-Verify, the 287G, which is the allowing ICE to. It's basically would force local law enforcement to cooperate with ICE as they come in and do immigration type related things, even though now local law enforcement voluntarily are cooperating with ICE, and they're doing a lot of agreements voluntarily. So that's been kind of a contentious issue as well. But those are, a few of the things.
And I know that you mentioned specifically about the budget and how that's been a major focus. In particular, you gave a passionate speech on the health and welfare budget, and after that, there weren't any senators that stood to debate you. Could you talk a little bit specifically about your opposition to that health and welfare budget and kind of your thought process going into that public debate?
Well, as I mentioned, I was frustrated with the budget process in total, but you can't get up and debate on every single one, and you can't vote no on, vote no on every single one. But so I picked one that was really impactful, a big budget, one that impacts a lot of folks, and quite frankly, touches on our most vulnerable members of our society. So that's why I picked that budget, to try to at least make a statement that we're doing some harm here. And another reason I picked that one is because that need will not go away. It'll go to hospital emergency rooms and law enforcement, mental health services, and eventually we'll raise the insurance rates of everybody, because you change the payer mix, and then your healthcare providers have got to try to make sense of their bottom line. So that's going to shift the cost to different places, including increased health insurance rates. And when we have done things like this in the past, it may balance the bottom line today, but it sometimes can take years to dig back out of that and fix that, so to speak, as far as the kind of the damage we've done. And when you look at the Medicaid, they took the 3% cut in July, and then another 2% on top of that, and then eliminated some programs within that realm, and also not recognizing anything for inflation is probably more like a 7 or 8% cut on some of those programs. And then they come back and then they pass the base budget, and then they come back with an enhancement here and there. And it's quite frankly just very confusing to try to keep up with what they're trying to do to get these budgets passed. But so I picked that one because I thought it was one that impacted a lot of folks, and one that was really problematic to me. The problem was, after that budget died, they came back and they with another budget, and all they did is cut another $65 million out of it. So it was almost like it was punishment for killing the first budget, and that was pretty troubling as well.
And I know that we've talked a lot about the budgets and the legislative session, but I wanted to ask you about one more of your votes in particular. So this week, Governor Brad Little signed House Bill 752 into law, which would make it a misdemeanor for using the bathroom that's not assigned to your gender. And you were the, if I'm correct, sole Republican that joined the Democrats in opposition to that. So could you explain that vote and kind of your rationale for voting against that measure?
Yeah, when you look at that, and if you read the bill, what it says is that you have to use the bathroom that's your birth gender. That's what it says. So if you have a trans man, a woman that's transitioned to be a man, and I know some of them, and they have facial hair, by all appearances, you would say they're a man. So to be consistent with the law, they've got to go in the women's bathroom. And if they do that, they're going to cause quite a stir, as you might imagine. If they go in the men's bathroom, they're breaking the law, which is a misdemeanor, and 1 year in jail, up to 1 year in jail. If they do it twice, it's 5 years in jail. And so I begged the question, and I've asked this during the session, I asked the sponsors, in sidebar conversations or whatever, where are those people supposed to go to the restroom? And I don't get an answer. And if you look down further in the bill, it carves out an exception that if you're in dire need. And I'm almost like, are you kidding me? So we've got to have somebody that is going to be in dire need, so they go in a restroom that either is breaking the law or freaking somebody out. The other thing is, who's going to prove it out? If I'm somewhere and I see somebody go in a restroom I don't think is appropriate, who do I call that out to? Do I call law enforcement? And when they come, do they have to take that person into custody and go to the courthouse and search out their birth records to see what gender they were at birth? Do they have a medical professional examine them? There's no avenue by which to prove that out. And to me, it's just targeting a certain population because somehow we think they're a lesser class of citizen, that I don't agree with, and they're being targeted. And I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. And so when I vote against a bill like that, I don't see it through the lens of Republican, Democrat. I see it through the lens of what's fair. What are those folks supposed to do, and what kind of message are we sending? So that's just part of the rationale.
What would you say is the best way for your constituents to be involved in the legislative process and in the election process? Because I know we have the elections coming up. So what's the best way for your constituents to be involved?
Well, certainly in the election process, I think everybody feels like you want to get out the vote and get people to vote for you, of course. But my perspective is I just want to see a great turnout, because the more people that gets involved, the more I can find comfort in dealing with whatever that result is. If I win, lose, or whatever, knowing that more and more people weighed in, that helps me to appreciate the process that the people were engaged. And I think people are getting more and more inclined to do that. The other thing, as far as reaching out in the event that I come back, is we are now in our committee hearings allowing Zoom calls, so people can Zoom in from all over the state and testify, and that's been a real benefit. So people don't have to travel, and the optics and the audio is really good. for the most part. And so that's really the best way. The emails aren't the best because they end up, I get hundreds of emails, and that tends to get lost in the shuffle. So, and people that have my contact information, maybe on a personal email or phone, then that can help as well. But text messages are always good because you can't always answer the phone. But again, testifying in committee, getting involved in particular issues you have concerns with, it's always really helpful.
Perfect. And again, thank you so much, Senator Guthrie, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you.